At Thanksgiving, my sister announced, "We're renovating. You're paying half. $25,000. I said no. Dad snapped. "Then you're not family." I shrugged. "Fine." I left. 2 weeks later, they called panicking. "The bank says you co-signed our mortgage and just withdrew permission." I replied calmly, "You said I'm not family. Why would non-family co-sign your?" The first thing my sister said after Grace wasn't "Happy Thanksgiving." It was, "So we're renovating." She stood at the end of my parents' dining table like she was making an announcement at a press conference. Chin lifted, wine glass in hand, already smiling at the applause she expected. I blinked. "Okay." She nodded toward the kitchen doorway where my mom was pretending not to listen and my dad was carving turkey with the intensity of a man performing surgery. "We got bids. The contractor can start in January." My sister, Mara, tilted her phone so I could see a number on the screen. $50,000. "And you're paying half. 25 grand. The fork slipped a little in my hand. I looked around like someone was filming a prank. "You're serious," I said. Mara shrugged, all casual. "Obviously. You don't have kids. You're the one who can afford it. I'm a massage therapist. I do well enough. I'm busy, booked weeks out, and I'm proud of that. But I'm not a bank. I'm not a walking renovation fund." "You didn't ask," I said carefully. "You're telling me. Because if we ask, you'll do your little I need to think thing." She waved a hand like my boundaries were a mosquito. "It's Thanksgiving. Family doesn't make things complicated." My pulse started thumping in my ears, but I kept my voice steady. "No." The word sat in the air like it didn't belong there. Mara's smile faltered. "Excuse me." I said no. I repeated, louder this time because my throat was tightening. "I'm not paying $25,000 for renovations I didn't agree to." My dad finally looked up from the turkey. His eyes were sharp, already angry, like my refusal was an insult, not an answer. "Louis," he snapped. "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Say no." I asked. "That's all I'm doing." Mara's cheeks flushed. "You're embarrassing me. You embarrassed yourself when you announced my money like it was yours." My mom made a small sound, half cough, half warning. Dad set the knife down hard enough that the carving fork rattled against the platter. "If you can't help your own family," he said, voice rising, "then you're not family." The room went silent. Even the football game in the living room sounded far away, muffled by the sudden weight in my chest. I stared at him for a full second. My hands were shaking, but I didn't let my voice shake. "Okay," I said. Then I actually shrugged. "Fine." Mara scoffed, like she'd won something. "Oh my God." Dad leaned forward. "You hear me? You don't get to pick and choose when you're our son." I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, an ugly, loud sound that felt honest. "You just did," I said. "You picked." "I heard you." I picked up my coat from the chair by the wall and slipped my phone into my pocket with fingers that didn't feel like mine. "Louis," my mom hissed, "sit down. Don't be dramatic." "Not being dramatic," I said. "I'm leaving." Mara threw her hands up. "Over a renovation? You're acting like we asked for a kidney." "You asked for $25,000, I said, staring right at her. "That's not a side dish." Dad's voice followed me down the hallway. "If you walk out, don't come back." I paused at the front door, palm on the knob. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to make it softer, easier. I wanted to be the version of me they trained, apologetic, flexible, grateful to be tolerated. But I remembered the way my sister had said you're paying like it was already done. And I remembered my dad's face when he said you're not family, like he meant it. So I opened the door and stepped into the cold night. "Happy Thanksgiving," I muttered to the air, and I shut the door behind me. I drove home shaking. Not sobbing, not screaming, just shaking in that quiet, ugly way you do when your body doesn't know where to put all the adrenaline. At a red light, my phone buzzed. "Mara, stop being petty. Dad's furious. Just send the money and apologize." I laughed, one sharp, humorless burst, because it wasn't even a request. It was a command, like I was a vending machine that just needed a harder punch. I didn't reply. I got home, fed my cat, and sat on my couch staring at the blank TV screen while the apartment hummed with that lonely kind of peace. Then my phone buzzed again. "Mom, please don't do this. You know how your father gets. We need this renovation. The house is falling apart. We need. Not want. Not hope. Need." I typed. "I'm not paying for renovations I didn't agree to. Please don't contact me tonight." I set my phone face down like it could burn me. I should have slept. But around 2 a.m., I found myself going through old files on my laptop, bank statements, scanned documents, boring adult paperwork, because my brain was spiraling and needed something concrete. That's when I saw it, a folder labeled mortgage docs. My stomach sank. 3 years ago, when Dad got laid off and Mom's hours got cut, they called me crying. They were behind. They were scared. They promised it was temporary. They asked if I could help, just on paper, so they could refinance and get a better rate. I remember the exact tone my dad used. It doesn't mean you're paying it, son. It just helps us qualify. You're not responsible. I should have walked away then. I should have told them to figure it out like everyone else. But I was still in that old mode. The one where love was measured by what you gave up. So yes, 3 years ago, I co-signed. Not because I was rich, because I was stupidly hopeful. I hadn't thought about it in months. Payments were set on auto-pay from their account, and they always assured me everything was fine. I'd asked once or twice and got the usual, "Why are you so suspicious of your own parents?" Now, sitting in my dark apartment, I opened the folder and looked at the scanned paperwork. My name was there. My signature was there. My responsibility was there. And suddenly, Mara demanding $25,000 didn't feel like the real problem. It felt like the beginning of something worse. The next morning, I called the bank. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call my sister. I called the one place that would give me facts instead of guilt. After navigating the robotic menu, I got a woman named Denise in the mortgage department. Her voice was polite, slightly tired, the way customer service voices always are. "I'm calling to check my status on a loan," I said. "I'm a co-signer on a mortgage with my parents." There was a pause as she pulled up the account. "Okay," Denise said slowly. "I see you here as a co-borrower. What can I help you with? Can you tell me what products are open on this account?" I asked. "Any lines of credit? Any new applications?" Another pause, then a click of keyboard. "Well," she said carefully, "there was an application submitted recently for a home equity line of credit, HELIC, tied to the property. It's in process." My grip tightened on my phone. "Submitted recently as in when?" "2 weeks ago," she said. 2 weeks. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. A HELIC. For renovations. I swallowed hard. Was I notified? "It shows here that disclosures were sent," Denise said. "To the email on file." "I never received anything," I said, already knowing what she was going to say next. Denise read the email address out loud. It wasn't mine. It was a weird variation of mine. One extra letter. One number swapped. The kind of typo that isn't an accident when someone is trying to intercept your mail. My stomach went cold. "Denise," I said, voice tight, "I did not submit that application. I did not authorize that email address. I need to flag this immediately." Her tone changed. Sharper. Professional in a different way. "Okay," she said. "I'm going to transfer you to our fraud and security department. Stay on the line." The hold music started. I stared at my kitchen counter like it was going to give me answers. 3 minutes later, a man came on. "Fraud department. This is Mark." I explained. Everything. The cosign. The sudden renovation demand. The email address that wasn't mine. Mark didn't sound shocked. That almost scared me more. "I'm going to place a freeze on any additional draws or approvals associated with your identity," he said. "We're also going to require new identity verification from you and your co-borrowers." "Can you remove me?" I asked. He exhaled. "Not from an existing mortgage without refinancing or payoff, but you can absolutely withdraw consent for any new credit products and report unauthorized activity. If you believe your signature or consent was misused, we'll need an affidavit and potentially a police report." My mouth went dry. "So they tried to get a HELIC using my name." "That's what it appears," Mark said. "And if your consent wasn't given, we'll stop the process." A bitter laugh slipped out of me. "They're going to lose their minds." Mark didn't laugh. "Mr. Lewis, I'm going to be blunt. If your family members are attempting to use your identity to secure credit, that's serious. It can impact your credit, your liability, your future financing. You're doing the right thing calling." After I hung up, I sat on the floor of my kitchen with my back against the cabinet and stared at nothing for a long time. Thanksgiving wasn't about turkey. It was about leverage. They weren't asking me to pay half because they believed in family. They were asking because they thought they already had me trapped. I did everything Mark told me to do. I went into a branch. I showed my ID. I filled out forms. I signed a fraud affidavit stating clearly that I did not authorize any HELIC application, did not approve that email address, and did not consent to any new credit under my name. The banker helping me, young guy, nervous smile, kept looking up like he wasn't sure if I was about to explode. I didn't. I was too calm for that. Anger is loud when you're still hoping someone will apologize. I wasn't hoping anymore. Before I left, I also froze my credit with the bureaus, changed every password, turned on every alert. I treated my identity like a house I'd finally decided to lock. That night, my phone was quiet. No messages, no calls. Almost like my family could sense that something had shifted and they didn't know where the new landmines were. For a brief moment, I thought maybe they'd let it go. Then, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, call it curiosity, call it instinct, swiped to accept. My mother's voice hit my ear like a siren. "Louis," she cried. "What did you do?" I pulled the phone away for a second, then put it back. "Hello, Mom. We got a call from the bank," she said, panicked, breathy. They said you withdrew permission. Something about fraud, and now everything is frozen." In the background, I heard my dad's voice, muffled but furious. "Give me the phone." I stayed calm. My hands weren't shaking this time. "That's correct," I said. Mom sounded like she was crying for real. Or at least crying the way she cries when consequences show up at the door. "Why would you do that to us?" she demanded. "We were counting on that money. The contractor. Mara said you were renovating." I cut in. She said I was paying half. $25,000. Without asking. "It's our home," Mom snapped. "It benefits all of us." "I don't live there," I said. "And you told me I'm not family." There was a pause like she'd forgotten that part. Dad's voice took over, loud and sharp. "You called the bank? Are you trying to sabotage us?" I actually smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly, sickly predictable. "You sabotaged yourselves," I said. "Did you apply for a helic using my identity?" "What?" Dad barked. "Of course we did. You're on the mortgage. It's normal." "It's not normal to use a fake email address to intercept disclosures," I said. Silence. I could hear breathing. The faint clink of something in the kitchen on their end. Maybe Mom pacing and bumping a spoon against a mug. Dad's voice came back slower. "You're imagining things." "I spoke to the fraud department," I said. "They confirmed the email address on the application wasn't mine." Mom gasped, like the word fraud was a curse I'd thrown at them. "That was probably a typo," she said quickly. Too quickly. Mara probably typed it wrong. "Mara also announced I'm paying $25,000 like she was ordering dessert," I said. "So I'm done assuming mistakes are accidental." Dad's voice cracked like a whip. "You ungrateful. After everything we've done for you." I laughed again, soft and tired. "Everything you've done for me." "Yes," he shouted. "We raised you." You raised me like an investment you could cash out," I said, still calm. "And on Thanksgiving you told me I'm not family because I wouldn't write a check on command." Mom tried a different angle. Her voice went syrupy, like she was switching masks in real time. "Louis, honey, you know your father didn't mean it like that. He was upset." "He meant it," I said. And honestly, it clarified a lot. Dad's breathing was heavy. "So what now? You think you can just pull out and leave us with nothing?" "I didn't pull out of your mortgage," I said. "I pulled out of your new loan. The one you tried to get with my name." "You're on the house," Mom cried. "It's tied to you too." "Yes," I said. "And that's why I'm protecting myself." From the background, I heard Mara's voice shriek. Distant but clear. Who is he talking to? Then Mara grabbed the phone. I could hear her storming, the thud of footsteps. "Louis," she snapped. "Are you serious right now? You're going to ruin Mom and Dad's credit because you threw a tantrum?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You said I wasn't family," I reminded her. "Why would non-family co-sign your mortgage? Or your renovation loan?" Mara made a frustrated sound. "Stop being dramatic. This isn't about that." "It is exactly about that," I said. She hissed, low and venomous. "We needed that line of credit. Dad already told the contractor we'd have it. We already picked materials. You can't just—" "I can," I said. And I did. There was a long, ugly silence. Then Mara's voice dropped into something colder. "You're going to regret this." I leaned back against my couch and looked out my window at the quiet street below. "No," I said. "I'm not." She hung up. The next few days were a messy parade of consequences. My aunt texted, "Your mom is devastated. Why are you doing this to them?" My cousin messaged, "Heard you messed with your parents' mortgage." That's low. It was amazing how fast the story traveled, and how carefully it was edited. So I stopped letting it spread without the truth. I replied to my aunt. They applied for a helic using my identity with an email that wasn't mine. I reported it to the bank. That's the whole story. No emojis. No pleading. Just fact. I replied to my cousin. I didn't mess with their mortgage. I stopped a new loan they tried to take under my name. If that's low, you're welcome to co-sign for them. That shut him up. Then my dad tried again, this time with a different tactic. He called from his number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was pure rage. You think you're so big now because you rub people's backs for money. You're nothing without us. If you don't fix this, don't bother coming around. Ever. The old me would have curled in on himself. Would have wondered if he was right. But the new me just sat there, listening, and felt something I didn't expect. Relief. Because it wasn't confusing anymore. They weren't misunderstood. They were exactly who they'd always been. Here's the part that still makes my jaw tighten when I think about it. After the bank froze the helic application, my parents couldn't just fix it. They tried. Oh, they tried. They went into the branch together. They called. They complained. But the minute fraud is flagged, the bank stops treating you like a customer and starts treating you like a risk. They were asked for documentation. They were asked to verify email addresses. They were asked why a co-borrower had filed an affidavit. And because I was a co-signer on the mortgage, the bank wouldn't move forward without my consent. The contractor, who had been promised a January start, backed out when the money wasn't guaranteed. There, we're renovating. Fantasies started collapsing like cheap drywall in humidity. Then the real fallout began inside their house. Mara had already posted Pinterest boards. She'd already told friends she was helping her parents with the renovation, like she was the hero in the story. Now she had to explain why everything was delayed. And my parents had to sit with the fact that their plan, pressure me publicly, threaten my belonging, then use my name anyway, didn't work. They didn't apologize. They just panicked. A month later, I got a letter from the bank confirming the helic application was canceled and flagged as unauthorized. It also stated that any future applications involving my identity would require in-person verification. I held that paper in my hands like it was a shield. Around the same time, my credit monitoring pinged me. Attempted inquiry blocked. They tried again. That's when I did the final thing I should have done years ago. I hired a lawyer. Not for revenge. Not to ruin them. Just to protect myself. We sent a formal notice to my parents stating that any use of my personal information for credit applications without my written consent would be treated as fraud and reported. My lawyer, dry, efficient woman with a voice like a stapler, also advised me to consider whether staying tied to their mortgage long-term was worth the risk. So I made a plan. I told my parents, through the lawyer, that if they wanted to keep their house, they needed to refinance within a certain time frame and remove me. Otherwise, I would pursue legal options to force resolution. Suddenly, they found motivation. Funny how that works. The day they finally refinanced without me, my dad didn't call to tell me. My mom didn't text. Mara didn't send a single petty message. I found out because my credit report updated. My name was off their mortgage. The invisible chain snapped. That night, I went to work like normal. I did deep tissue on a guy who always fell asleep halfway through and snored softly into the face cradle. I chatted with an older woman about her grandkids while I worked her shoulders. I came home and cooked myself something simple. Pasta, garlic, olive oil. No drama. No shouting. No family group chat exploding with demands. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel before. I wasn't grieving losing them. I was grieving the version of them I'd spent years trying to earn. A few weeks after that, I ran into Mrs. Halprin, my favorite regular client, at a grocery store. She's the kind of woman who smells like expensive lotion and calls everyone darling, like she invented kindness. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. You look lighter, she said. I laughed. New moisturizer? She waved her hand. No, your eyes. Like you've stopped carrying something that wasn't yours. I stood there in the produce aisle holding a bag of oranges and felt my throat tighten. Because she was right. That was exactly it. I didn't tell her the whole story. I didn't need to. I just said, yeah, I think I finally did. I still get messages sometimes. My mom, on holidays, will send, hope you're well. Mara once sent, Dad's blood pressure is bad. Stress makes it worse. A cousin tried to invite me to a barbecue like nothing happened. I don't engage. Not because I'm punishing them. Because I'm done negotiating my humanity for access to a family that only wants me when they need something. The truth is simple. If the price of being family is surrendering my money, my credit, my peace, and my right to say no, then I'd rather not be family. So when my dad told me, "Then you're not family," and I shrugged and said, "Fine," I wasn't being cold. I was finally being honest. And when they called 2 weeks later panicking, "The bank says you co-signed our mortgage and just withdrew permission," my calm reply wasn't cruelty. It was closure. Because they taught me the rules the moment they tried to spend my name like cash. And I finally learned the only one that matters. No one gets to use you and call it love. This story is about the moment family obligation becomes financial fraud, and the cold relief when you finally protect yourself instead of their feelings. Lewis isn't cruel. He's a massage therapist who spent years believing love meant saying yes until it hurt. His family didn't ask him to co-sign their mortgage because they trusted him. They needed his credit to qualify. Then they treated that signature like ownership of his future income. When his sister announced he was paying $25,000 for renovations like it was already decided, she wasn't being thoughtless. She was revealing the system. Lewis existed to fund their comfort, and his consent was optional. The Thanksgiving demand wasn't the real crime. It was the setup. 2 weeks before that dinner, his parents had applied for a $50,000 HELOC using his identity and a fake email address to intercept disclosures. They weren't planning to ask permission. They were planning to present him with debt and guilt him into compliance. When he called the bank's fraud department, he didn't ruin their renovation. He discovered they'd already decided his financial future without him. His father's line, "If you can't help family, you're not family," was a threat disguised as values. It meant, "If you won't let us use you, we'll revoke your belonging." Lewis's brilliance was calling the bluff. When he said fine and walked out, he wasn't abandoning them. He was refusing to fund people who'd announced he was disposable. What this story teaches us: family helps family, becomes fraud when help is taken, not offered. Real help requires consent. Anything else is theft with a holiday backdrop. When someone threatens to disown you for setting boundaries, they've already decided you're a resource, not a relative. His father's "don't come back" wasn't grief. It was rage that the ATM shut down. Co-signing isn't love, it's legal liability. People who love you don't hide risk behind fake emails and unauthorized applications. The people angriest about fraud investigations are usually the ones committing it. When Lewis reported unauthorized use, his family asked, "Why are you doing this to us?" Not "what happened." That's confession, not confusion.